I had an idea for today. I couldn't really pull it off, but maybe Venerable Simke can, because she's a better storyteller. I wanted to do a series on the foremost disciples of the Buddha, because we heard a story this weekend, and that story about that one practitioner, he was the foremost in intuition. But I couldn't make it work, so I went instead for a concept. Foremost of concepts. So and of course this morning reminded me of it as my afflictions arose, But when Venerable was teaching on Nagarjuna, we went through these, 57 kind of afflictive states or whatever. And the one that really stood out for me was when she got to non-fortitude. I just was like, oh my God, this is too much. So here's what Nagarjuna says. He says, non-fortitude means that one is unable to bear it when others do one harm or when one suffers. I can't bear it. And then she went on to tell us how this was the opposite of, it's not just a lack of fortitude, but it's like an opposite. It's like an active state. You're not just lacking something, you're actually doing something. You can't tolerate things, suffering, criticism, anything. The feelings that arise in you when you start to practice the Dharma and you see the contents of your mind and you feel like you want to just I'm out of here. So you want to get like real aggressive, or you want to just run with these kind of things. That's how it goes. So I always like to say to myself, perceived harm. I think it's much better for my mind to say I'm perceiving harm than I'm being harmed, because usually it's something so small and it's just ridiculous. So the opposite of that, this fortitude, is really attractive to me when you think about having a mind that is very calm and resolute and able to see clearly in the face of things that are difficult. I mean, that's just so attractive. And the one story that did come up was Milarepa, when he had his last meeting with Gampopa, the last time he saw him. You might remember the part where he says, he turns to him, he bares his rear end and bends over, and he's all callous because Milarepa meditated so much. So, the idea there was, sit and meditate. But what he said was, hey, if things are too comfortable and this and this and this, you're not going to make any progress. So he actually was instructing him in fortitude. And we're also instructed in the Vinaya. When we do our recitation, it says, fortitude is the first and foremost path. The Buddha declared it as the supreme way to attain nirvana. One who has left the home life yet harms or injures others is not called a renunciate. And so I think for monastics and non-monastics, this is a very important instruction that he gives. These were instructions he gave to monastics, but they really apply to all of us. And so these are the things that we can aspire to, which is when others are angry at you, or maybe when you're hearing all this angry rhetoric, don't react with anger. That doesn't help anyone or anything. If others hit you, don't retaliate. If others criticize you, don't criticize them in return. Can you imagine what the last year would have been like if there had been no return of criticism for criticism in the media? Oh my gosh. It would have been a very different year. Just that one item. If we could just do that. If others embarrass or insult you, do not respond by embarrassing them or insulting them. So the other thing I like to remind myself about this is, I don't remember where we learned this, but this is considered the real ascetic practice. And Shantideva, yeah. So all these are the kind of thoughts that help me to aspire to this, And so thinking about the benefits of something and helps me to have interest in it, and then thinking about the negativities of the lack of it. Like when Venerable talked about non-fortitude, didn't you all just kind of squirm in your chair? I think I was looking around and people were kind of like, oh. So it's just so nice to watch yourself get to the other side of these things, realize the capacity that we have, And then, of course, what I always like to say to myself, the problem isn't that we fall down, meaning the problem isn't that these afflictions arise, it's that we don't get back up. Meaning to me that we let these things wallow. That's to me my main criteria for myself. These things will arise. We will have anger until we're way far along the path. But we don't have to wallow in it. We don't have to stay in it. We don't have to let it stick around. We have all these tools. We have each other. We have all the conditions that we need here to work with these things in a positive way. I think maybe you've said this, I know I feel this way, that I can't identify a state of mind that I've had that the Buddha's teachings don't help me with. So that gives me a great deal of confidence in the path.